Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Big Bros podcast. My name is Ilan, and I'm joined by my lovely friend and co host, Jeremy. But more importantly, we are joined by Professor Charlie Teo AM, a globally recognized neurosurgeon, teacher, and philanthropist, known for pioneering in minimally invasive brain surgery, taking on tumours that others have called inoperable, and driving major funding for brain cancer research. Professor Charlie Teo, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Now, one of the huge reasons we wanted to get you on is because a huge role model for a lot of young people is someone that can stick by their moral convictions, someone that when the going gets tough, they've got a strong set of values that they can turn towards and rely upon. And with everything that's gone on in the past decade, I think you're someone who very much embodies a strong moral conviction. But for us, we're curious to know, who was that man when he was a boy? What do we need to know about current you that can be explained by your upbringing?
Well, I think a lot can be explained by upbringing, and certainly in my situation, a lot can be explained by my matriarchal upbringing. So I was a product of a dysfunctional marriage. My father left our family when I was very young, maybe 9 years of age, had an affair, had another wife, came back, expected my mum to be polygamous and accept him back, and she chose not to. And so already you can start to see this very, very strong woman who was leading by example, incredibly generous, and very simple in her dogma and her sort of moral compass. It was very easy to follow. The reason being is because her English wasn't so good, it wasn't her first language, and she'd come up with these funny sort of phrases. And when you first heard them, you thought, well, what in the hell does that mean? But when you dug deeper, you realised that she was saying something very profound, but in a sort of broken English way. One of them, for example, was, just because 100 people jump over the cliff, you don't have to be one of them. Now, what the hell does that mean? Well, if you boil it down, it sort of says, just, be comfortable with the fact that you might be an individual and you may not have to follow the crowd. Another one was up a ladder, down a ladder. And, I'm not quite sure what that meant either. But I think in her broken leadership meant, the higher you fly, the further you fall. So just be aware of that. And, the other saying is that no one loves bad news, but everyone hates a surprise. And I guess if you are prepared for downfall, then hopefully it won't have the same negative impact on you as someone who wasn't prepared. And her job was to prepare me for life, and she did it very, very well. So I put it all down to my mum, who taught me these moral codes.
Was she your biggest role model? Because a big part of our show is leaning on role models, and it's the main reason we started this show to kind of encompass those role models and those voices that have forged the pathway for us growing up and for those that are listening growing up. So was she your key role model growing up, and did she at all influence what you do now, both career-wise and in terms of your characteristics?
Yes, 100%. I don't hesitate at all to say that she is my number one role model in the big picture things. Now, what I mean by that is that, of course, she wasn't my role model when it comes to surgical, indications and things like that. I had surgical role models, professional role models. But in terms of the big picture, the person, the individual who has to, navigate life, she's number one role model, 100%.
Why medicine, though? Growing up, we're delivered so many career options, I suppose. And maybe it was a bit less, maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago when you started studying. But I'm curious, what was the pull and drive towards medicine initially?
Well, sadly, it was a Chinese type thing. I mean, I'm sure you boys have heard of the Joy Luck Club or read it. And there's a very, very typical archetypal Chinese family where you have the helicopter mum and the helicopter parents who are very demanding of their children, and it's all about education and going into a profession that will provide you with the means of a good steady income. So a lot of Chinese parents want their children to be lawyers, doctors, teachers, sort of thing. And so I never wanted to be a doctor. I was very good with my hands, so I wanted to be a mechanic. I got my black belt in karate, so I wanted to be a bouncer or a security sort of person. I was pretty gregarious and I loved acting at school, so I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be famous. And so all these things I really wanted to do, but I guess parents know best, and they sort of gently led me into the field of medicine. I, in fact, after school, started an apprenticeship in motor mechanics because I just loved dabbling with engines and pulling things apart and stuff, and was never treated with much respect as a motor mechanic apprentice. In fact, people would treat you very poorly, and I didn't like that situation. I wanted to be treated well. I wanted to have a station by which people would say, "Oh, well, he's an achiever, or he's got a certain degree of intellect." And so because I got the marks to get into medicine, and because my parents were sort of pushing me in that direction, not my parents, my mum, I did medicine.
What's the course kind of trajectory for that and for you in your case? How do you go from just studying medicine to then operating on inoperable procedures?
Well, you probably think I'm going to be eating humble pie here, but this is the honest truth. And the honest truth is that I don't think I'm anything special. I really don't. All I did was treat my patients, and all I do is treat my patients the way I would want a doctor to treat me. And I thought all doctors do that. And I thought that all doctors had this mantra, or certainly a moral code by which they treat their patients like a loved one, and that's all I've done. I can tell you now, again, you'll probably think I'm just eating humble pie, but I'm not. I am not that intelligent. I am as intelligent as any other doctor or any other person. I'm not that gifted in terms of dexterity. I mean, I'm very good with my hands, but I've seen a lot of doctors just as good, if not better, with their hands and their dexterity. I have big balls. I have a lot of courage, but I've seen other people with a lot of courage. I have, absolute tenacity, and I stick with it. I don't like being beaten, but I've seen other people with that as well. And I guess what I'm saying is that if you put it all together, courage, tenacity, surgical dexterity, intelligence, and compassion, then it should make a good doctor. Now, having said that, a lot of people have those qualities, and a lot of doctors have those qualities. And yet, why is it that I stand out? And on reflection, I think it's the balls. I think it's the courage, because you need a huge amount of courage. And you were saying before that your audience, because it's a young demographic, they want some sort of way of navigating this, of life, and sort of, getting past all the obstacles. Well, here's what you need. You need to have 100% conviction in what you're doing is right. Now, having said that, there's a lot of people who are misguided and they think they're doing right, but they're not. But if you always think of the greater good and the betterment of your fellow man rather than yourself, you'll always do the right thing. You'll take the high road every time. If you start thinking about yourself and putting yourself before everyone else, i.e. your own financial needs, your own personal needs, your own this and that, then you're going to come a gutser, because, you've in medicine, which is a very giving vocation, you've got to put your patients first. And that's what I've done. So what I've done is I've gone, holy shit, if I do that, all my colleagues are going to be after me if I don't get a good result. I'm putting myself out on a limb. I'm really making myself very, very susceptible to criticism. But at the end of the day, am I in medicine for myself, or am I in medicine for the patient? So then you've got to do a complete 180-degree turn and think, hang on, I don't care what it means for me. If it's going to extend that person's life, if it's going to give them autonomy, if it's going to cure them, then that's why I should be doing it, not because of what it's doing for me, but what it's doing for them. And that's all I've done. I promise you, that's all I've done in my career. And now I'm, sort of labelled as this sort of fantastic doctor. I just have done what all doctors should do.
Yeah. And a big theme of that is courage, like you speak of. You speak about being convicted, you speak about having a great sense of courage. How do you teach someone to be courageous? How do you learn how to be courageous?
Well, again, it comes back to what you said, Jeremy. It's all about role models in your life. And I think if a younger person saw an older person succeed, of course, you've got to define what success is, but succeed, then and succeed through courage, then it's going to give you the courage to do that as well. If, however, you see a very courageous person do things through courage and the betterment of mankind, and yet they don't succeed, then of course it's going to taint you, and it's going to think, oh shit, maybe I should temper my courage because Charlie Teo is now can't practice in Australia anymore, and he's had all his colleagues against him, and he's had the media against him. Maybe he's not such a role model, anymore. So look, I don't know, but I would like to think that at the end of the day, even though on paper it may not look like I've been successful, then I'd like to make sure that people know that I am successful because, I judge success by happiness, and I'm an incredibly happy person. So despite all the things that have happened to me, despite the fact that they took away my ability to earn money, my reputation, my ability to pursue what I love most in life, operating, despite all of that, I'm still a happy person. I still love getting up every day and meeting people and doing things and helping people. And so I think that measure of success is probably better than, any other measure, like, being rich or being famous or, whatever.
I suppose it's better to strive for meaning than it is for pleasure in a lot of ways, I think, in life, because pleasure is fleeting, and at least with meaningful pursuits, you can go to bed at night and know that you did something that at least filled your cup in some way. You've mentioned previously that you have and you did treat your patients as though you were treating someone in your family. By the same token, though, in the cases where a patient hasn't recovered post-surgery or they've even passed away, what kind of impact does that have on you as a doctor, but more importantly, as a person?
Well, it used to have a huge impact on me, and I used to think I was a failure, and it was hard to get back on the horse again after a fall like that. But a really wise sort of senior registrar at Concord Hospital, when I was a junior registrar, sat me down after a cardiac arrest where the patient died, and said, "Charlie, please don't take this to bed with you. Don't dwell on this because that patient was going to die anyway. You tried your hardest, and you've got to understand that shit happens and these things happen." And so when someone does poorly from my surgery or dies despite my surgery or because of my surgery, I have to sit back and go, well, listen, I tried my best. I did it for all the right reasons. The outcome wasn't what I wanted or they wanted, but, shit happens. Now, if you can't say that, that's the sort of person who finds it difficult to practice medicine or difficult to be happy. So if you did the operation for the wrong reasons, I did it for my own ego, I did it for money, I did it for reputation, I did it because I've got a small dick and I wanted to prove something, then, that would be absolutely devastating to you and your psyche because you can't justify it then. Internally, you have to admit that you did it for the wrong reasons. And again, all the more reason why every surgical decision has to be based on what's best for the patient, not what's best for you.
At the same token, one of the criticisms, correct me if I'm wrong, or at least in the Australian medical establishment, was if something goes against kind of evidence-based practice, even if it does garner positive results, it's not uncommon for there to be some form of blowback or medical establishment retribution. I see it almost similarly, obviously not to the same extent as in medicine, but in the psychology world. So I'm finishing off my training. And there's somewhat of what I believe is an idolization of what is evidence-based. And the problem I find there is, if you only look at what is defined as evidence-based, then it removes a sense of creativity of looking at more novel ways. How did you navigate that space? Because at the time, if you were pioneering kind of new means of surgery and operating on things that maybe other neurosurgeons weren't kind of identifying as evidence-based, how do you go through with that decision? Is it a matter of relying on your own theoretical knowledge? Is it relying on, past experiences?
All of the above. So when someone makes a surgical decision, it's based on your own personality, the personality of your patient, the evidence or lack of, consensus, the concept of futility, financial constraints, and all those things go into this computer, and then you spit out an answer or a bottom line. And so all of those things that you mentioned are very, very important. Okay, so if, for example, you were very rigid in your thinking and thought, well, I've been told that I will be vulnerable to medical governing bodies if I ever do anything that has not been endorsed by consensus, then that's the thing that's going to influence you most. You're going to go to an MDT, multidisciplinary team clinic. You're going to present the case and you're going to wait for consensus. And then you're going to go back to the patient and say, sorry, I can't do it because, whatever. Everyone thinks I shouldn't do it. Also, if your number one determinant of surgical decision-making was evidence-based medicine, then you'd read the literature, you'd look for the paper that says you should do it or shouldn't do it, and then you'd go back to the patient and say, I'm not going to do your surgery because there's no evidence that it works. And so you can see what's happening here. I'm not saying that my colleagues are wrong. Please let me make that statement clear. We all make decisions based on all these different factors and our own personalities, our own last 10 cases or last 100 cases. So, no single person's going to come, no group of people is going to come up with the same decision, altogether, or the same decision. But in my situation, the thing that I put more onus on than anything else is patient autonomy. And I'm not the only person that does that. If you read the textbooks on surgical decision-making or decision-making in medicine, at the end of the day, these books are pretty thick and they talk about all those things that we just talked about then. But at the last paragraph is always the same, and that is patient autonomy should be the one that is the most important determinant of surgical decision-making.
Is the surgical decision always down to the patient's autonomy and only their autonomy? Because what about the cases?
Oh my God, Jim, you guys are very clever. You're asking fantastic questions, and I was actually going to bring that up because you're absolutely right, and that is you can influence patients, and that's what they accused me of. They said, and it's true, if you spin a good yarn and are upbeat, then you can almost convince people to have surgery, even if it may not be in their best interest. And, I'm talking cosmetic surgeons, for example, or plastic surgeons who go, oh, yes, your boobies are too small or too big. And, and so it's almost convincing them they need something done. So you're absolutely right. It's not just patient autonomy. It's patient autonomy based on correct information. And so at the end of the day, that's what they got me on. They got me on the fact that I'm too upbeat, too positive, and too optimistic in my consent process. My reply to that was that, are you kidding, you guys? These people have all been told they're going to die. These people have been told by senior neurosurgeons from whence they came that they had tumours that were so difficult that they're not going to even offer surgery. And so my job is not to underscore or exaggerate the difficulty of the tumour or the high-risk nature of the operation. My job is to offer them hope and say, look, and that's what I say to all my patients, it is difficult. It is inoperable in many people's hands. It is high risk. but you are going to die in 2 weeks' time. And if you're willing to take the risk, I'm willing to take it with you. If you want to do it. So they've got to be well informed. And, your point is perfect, Jeremy. And that is, it's not just good enough to accept patient autonomy. It's patient autonomy based on correct information and informed consent. And that's what I haven't been able to prove to the governing bodies. The governing bodies think that they don't know what's going on in the room, so they assume that I'm like other doctors. I rush the interview, I do this, I do that, I lie. And so it's proven to me that it doesn't matter how many witnesses you've got in the room. It doesn't matter how your intentions are good. It doesn't matter what sort of person you are and how you've practiced medicine for the last 30 years. You've got to record the interview. So that's what I've been doing now, recording the interview so they can't accuse me of not glooming the patient well enough.
I relate to that to some degree, not to that degree of the situations you find yourself in, but just as a physiotherapist myself in clinical settings, it's that constant discussion of you want to offer your best service to the patient and you want to offer that with evidence, but also based on your experience. And it's trying to work out, where those two both interject to get the best outcome, obviously, for the patient. And I think personality is a massive trait, and being upbeat and being optimistic is a massive trait. And I've reflected on it so much as well. Just when I was a student in university, that's not something that's really taught that well. I feel like everything is quite robotic, too evidence-based, and we actually lose our human-to-human connection, and we lose that ability to be open, honest, and offer hope half of the time as well, because sometimes we're too rigid in our thinking according to the textbooks. Now, you spoke there about being hopeful and being honest. How do you personally balance offering hope whilst being honest with outcomes for patients so that the patients don't actually walk away with unrealistic expectations?
Yeah, I think it's just being cognizant of it. I think it's accepting that you can influence patients by being too upbeat or giving them misinformation. And so, that's why I give all my first come patients an hour. I know a lot of doctors spend 15 minutes and they schedule their timetable so they see a new patient every 15 minutes. I think that's wrong. And so I give them an hour because I think it's really important to spend the time to make sure that be cognizant. Be cognizant of the fact that just because you're upbeat doesn't mean that, they should be upbeat. And thankfully, it's worked well for me. It hasn't worked well lately, but until the big witch hunt 5 years ago, it worked very well. I had fellows who came to train with me from the most esteemed universities in the world. I'm talking Yale, Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Barrow, UCSF, Stanford, Vanderbilt. I've trained them all. So they've come from the best universities in the world, and some of them have gone back and said, Charlie, thank you so much. The fellowship was great. I learned a lot of neurosurgery, but the thing I learned most was the way you talk to your patients and you consent your patients. And I've always been really proud of that, which is kind of weird because that's what they eventually got me on. And I talk about this concept of glooming. And what I say to my residents and fellows, I say, listen, if anything, you should over-exaggerate the potential complications so that they are 100% going into this operation with their eyes open. So if the risk of death is, 0.1%, just say the risk of death is 1%. If the risk of paralysis is 20%, say it's 40%. So you can really, really underscore the high-risk nature of the operation. It's called glooming, and I'm very, very good at it. But that's the thing they've accused me of not being good at. It's crazy.
But by the same token as well, if that's what they've accused you of, and there's evidence to suggest that you've done what's conventionally practical and recommended, what do you think is the big driving force behind them trying to take you down?
Oh, it's obvious. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's pure jealousy. It's pure tall poppy syndrome. It's nothing else. It's not money. They earn much more money than I do. They do spine cases. They get paid well. They do workers' compensation. They get paid well. Craniotomies don't get paid well. I get paid less money for a 6-hour or 12-hour operation than a spine surgeon who does a 40-minute operation. So it's not money. It's got nothing to do with the results. I've published widely. I've got an H index of 38, which is the highest H index of any neurosurgeon in Australia. So it's not the fact that I haven't published. It's not the fact that I haven't been honest with my results. I've published more papers on complications than I have on good results. It's all based on pure jealousy. Pure jealousy. If I was a wilting flower and I was one of those people who sat back and go, yeah, you know, ate humble pie and didn't have a profile and, you know, all that kind of bullshit stuff, you know, they would have left me alone. I mean, look at the history. Look at the history. There are all these neurosurgeons who killed lots of patients who were terrible neurosurgeons. And what did their colleagues do? They just let them continue doing it. They, you know, because they weren't any threat to them. They were making them look good because they were so bad. And it wasn't until some whistleblower comes up and says, actually, you know, his results are just terrible. And if it wasn't for those whistleblowers, their colleagues aren't going to report them. But if you're doing something really good and getting great results and it makes you look not as good, or then, of course, you've got to either accept that you've got to upskill. So when someone's doing something better than you and the results are better than yours, you've got three options. You can refer patients to them. You can go, gee, I'd like to be that good and upskill, which takes time and money and effort and getting out of your comfort zone, or you can destroy that person. Now, which do you think is the easiest one to do? The easiest one to do is to destroy that person. And, you know, it's for your audience, you know, I'm sure there's going to be a percentage of them going, what a fucking bloody upstart. You know, how dare he think he's that good? But, you know, just like there are some sports people who are better batsmen and bowlers than the average Joe Blow, just like there are some businessmen who are very successful and good at their business, I'm sorry, but there are some doctors who are just very good at what they do. And it's hard for the public to accept that because the public put all doctors on a pedestal. They think they're all the same. They go and see a doctor somewhere. He's got a good rating. You look at his website. You speak to some people. Oh, yeah, he's good. So you just think that everyone's about the same. You don't think that someone could be actually exceptionally good at something. And then when that person says they're exceptionally good at something, oh, my God, what happens to that person? You know, you're an arrogant fucking prick, you know. So, you know, I guess what doctors do is they learn to eat humble pie and they learn to be very, very, they show a lot of humility because that's what their colleagues want them to do. Their colleagues want them to go, oh, no, I'm no better than so-and-so. And if so-and-so says it's inoperable, then I think it's inoperable as well. Do you boys know what they actually threw at me at the tribunal? So the two things they got me for, one was being overly optimistic because I said that taking out this tumour carried a risk of 5%, and they said I should have said 70% because in their hands it was 70%, but in my hands it was 5% because I'd published a paper on it. It's called brainstem gliomas, and my bad outcome rate was 6%. So, but they wanted me to say 70% because the rest of the neurosurgeons in Australia all agreed that there was a 70% risk of a bad outcome. And the second one was giving a contrary second opinion. I mean, what the fuck? Why would you get a second opinion if you know that the second doctor is always going to give the same as the first opinion? But that's exactly what they want you to do. They said to me, how dare you operate on that case? That case had been seen by an MDT in Perth. Everyone in that MDT said the tumour was inoperable. How dare you have the gall to say it's operable? And guess what? The outcome was bad. So there you go. You just proved that you shouldn't have operated on that patient. So then my lawyers go, well, hang on. You're right. That was a bad case. Outcome was terrible. Dr. Teo is very happy to admit that. But he did it based on his 11,000 operations and the fact that he's published. And with these results, can we please present them to the tribunal? No. We're not here to discuss the 11,000 cases. We're here to discuss the two cases on the table.
What does that tell you about the world we're living in
Well,
right now? Hey, just focusing on the minute negatives amongst a plethora of positives, really. And we say negatives, but is it really all that negative when the guidelines have been outlined clearly? You've offered those honest conversations, and you've done what you feel like is best for the patient, just like any decision in life.
I think a lot of this was also illuminated during COVID as well, because you saw how big the ego was in the medical industry, at least in the public health sector, such that if you disagreed with a certain lockdown protocol or you disagreed with, I suppose, the vaccine administration, a lot of those voices weren't even challenged, but they were kind of shut down because everyone had to have some sort of uniformity of opinion. It seems that that isn't something, it was more so illuminated to the public, I'd say, during COVID, but it seems like it's always been the case.
Yes, well, I'm just going to say this, and you can read into it the way you will, but I am not allowed to discuss COVID vaccines anymore. Mandated by one of the medical governing bodies. So that's all I'm going to say about it. I'm not allowed to mention it anymore.
We won't press you on it then.
Yes, so don't press me on it. But I will say this. I'm going to make this comment that when I visited North Korea, when I came back, everyone said, "Oh my God, you went to North Korea. Why?" And I went there to help the neurosurgeons and give lots of lectures and teach them how to do neurosurgery. But there was at the time, Kim Jong-un was saying that he didn't take a dump or something, something really crazy. And the rhetoric was that, nothing he does is bad, I guess. And yes, it's true that there are 8 TV stations that you could watch, and every one of them was about Kim Jong-un and how great he was and this and that. Then I came back to Australia and I thought, well, hang on, we're very critical of North Korea for censorship and spinning false information. But how much of that are we subjected to in Australia? And if you do a deep dive, you realise that in fact the wool is pulled over our eyes almost as much as in North Korea. I mean, we all know that doctors were gagged about the COVID vaccine. We all know that if they said anything, they would get their license taken off them. We all know now that even if the literature is changing and talking about the negative effects of the vaccine, people still aren't allowed to talk about it. And you are, there's significant punitive action if you discuss it. And then you've got all the other stuff that we are blinded by. I mean, the fact that vested interests sponsor groups just for their own, their own betterment. 40% of the funding of the the FDA in America is by Big Pharma. So it's almost half the funding they get is by Big Pharma. Well, guess what it is in Australia? 95%. 95% of the TGA is funded by Big Pharma. Now, are you telling me that they're going to spin the truth and then, they're going to say things against medications and against pharma? No, of course not. And so before we are critical of other societies, we've got to take a step back and look at our own society. There's a lot of censorship here, which is, damaging because it gives poor information or misinformation. And lives are lost because of that misinformation.
Speaking about criticism of other societies, what do you feel like is the biggest criticism and misconception that people have said about you?
I think the biggest one is money, because everyone thinks that he's got to be doing it for a reason. If it's not for this, if it's not for that, if it's not for his own psychological well-being, it's got to be for money. And so I've been and if you look at all the websites that have a discussion platform afterwards, there's mostly positive comments. So I love the Australian public for that, for seeing through all the bullshit. But the negative comments are all around money. And that's how they got me in the first place. So Henry Wu is this urologist who accused me of charging $100,000 for an operation. he knows full well that people who are raising $100,000 had to pay the hospital, the theatre costs, the imaging, the intensivist. So he knew, but he knew that would look bad. And so if you want to take someone down, just accuse them of being money hungry. Well, here's what I say to that. If I'm so money hungry, why aren't I rich? And if I was so money hungry, why would I spend at least 3 to 4 months every year doing pro bono work, which brings in no money and costs you a significant amount of money because you're still paying your malpractice insurance and overheads while you're doing the pro bono work? Okay, if I was rich, where are the spoils of that richness, of that wealth? I mean, I don't drive a nice car. I drive a little Nissan Qashqai. Not saying anything about Nissan. I love my Nissan Qashqai, but I don't have a European car. I don't have a fancy car. I don't live in the eastern suburbs. I don't have a big house. I don't have a boat. I always travel economy. I wear the same clothes every day until they're worn out. I'm just not the example of a person who lauds and worships money. Money means nothing to me. I'm a terrible businessman. I had all my money in my check account when I first came back to Australia until Steve Waugh was talking to me at the beach and goes, "Oh, what have you invested your money in?" I go, "Oh, I've got it in my check account. I'm making, 1.5% interest." He looked at me and goes, "You're a fucking idiot." And he told me I should sort of divest and put in, but that's what money means to me. It's nothing. It brings me no happiness. It brings me comfort and the ability to help others. And support my children's education and stuff like that, but it brings me no happiness. So that is the one misconception that I hate every time I see that in the media, that people think I do it for money.
Happiness, comfort, and the ability to bring light to other people's lives. There, you've had 11,000 cases that you've worked on. Is there one case that sticks out to you as a real feel-good story for you, and why?
Yeah, it's the lady who taught me so many lessons. So I did a TEDx talk on false hope, and I brought up the concept of quality of life because doctors are very guilty of being patriarchal and basically thinking they know better than their patients. And you can't blame doctors for that because our forefathers were like that and we were rewarded for being like that. But this lady, oh my God, I'll never forget it. So it was in the days when I was pretty young and I thought that I knew best or better. And she was quadriplegic. She had a tumor at a craniocervical junction between the brain and the spinal cord that doctors at a previous hospital had said was inoperable. So she took their word for it. It wasn't inoperable. It should have been and could have been taken out by someone good. Anyway, so it got worse and worse and worse, and she eventually became quadriplegic, and she couldn't do anything but talk and breathe. Couldn't move her arms or legs, quadriplegic and breathing and talking, that's all. So she came to me after 8 years and goes, "Look, I'm still alive. They said I'd be dead. I'm quadriplegic, but I'm still alive, and I'd like you to take the tumour out so I can keep living." Anyway, I talked to her for a while and I said, I thought it was my responsibility to teach her a lesson, teach her a lesson in life. So I go, maybe you should think about the fact that you can't even scratch your nose, you can't even walk to the beach, and maybe, this would be a good way to go. And, implying that she had no quality of life. Oh my God, she got so upset with me. I'll never forget it. She put me in my place. She goes, "How dare you tell me what is quality of life for me?" She goes, "I have two 16-year-old twin daughters, and they are going through hard times now. And quality of life to me is the ability to impart my wisdom and my knowledge onto my daughters. That is all that I want to do. So the ability to speak gives me quality of life, not the fact that I can't scratch my nose or run along the beach." So it really was a very light bulb moment for me where I go, oh my God, all these years I've been projecting my idea of quality of life onto my patients, and which is so wrong. It's so wrong. And she taught me that lesson. So I'll never forget her. I think it was a real turning point in the way I treat my patients when I met her.
So, how has that practically looked like when you're having consults with patients now? Instead of having the quality of life discussion, or you might, what are other things that that patient or previous patient taught you in terms of how you should manage future cases?
Almost all patients at the end of the conversation say, "What would you do?" Or, "If this was your daughter, what would you want? Or what would you do?" And that's when I used to give them my opinion because I thought my opinion mattered. I don't do that anymore now. So I simply say to them, look, sorry, I can't answer that because everyone's idea of quality of life is different. And, me, if I couldn't run on the beach, if I couldn't be independent, yes, I think I wouldn't have quality of life and I wouldn't be happy. And then I give them these examples. Stan Zemanek, the shock jock, who I operated on, I had the privilege of operating on. His tumor came back, and I had the chance to take it out for him and give him some more life. But at the same time, it was near his speech area. So I said, Stan, you've got recurrence, you've still got options. I could take it out, but it's going to ruin your speech. And he goes, speaking is my life. It means more to me than anything else. And so I'm sorry, but I'd rather be dead than have a speech problem. As opposed to this guy who was a miner up in Musselbrook. And so he was this guy who had the same tumour as Stan, got a recurrence, and I go, it's exactly the same conversation. I can take it out, buy you time, but sadly, it's going to take away your speech. He goes, take it. My wife does all the talking. I cycle my bicycle to work. In the mines where I don't talk to people. I come back, I watch TV. She looks after me. And so being able to talk is not a big deal. Not being able to talk is not a big deal for me. And so I took it out. 4 years later, the guy was still alive. So I bought him 4 years he might still be alive today. I bought him 4 years of good life. And when I saw him, he wasn't perturbed at all. His wife did all the talking for him. And he used to smile at the consult, at the appointment, and showed that he was still very happy with life. And yet I would never have thought that. But that's what you've got to understand. You've got to understand that everyone's idea of quality of life or, how important life is different. Some people are incredibly religious and think that death is not so bad because you're going to a greater place, a nicer place. And other people think that this is it. And once you die here, there's no other afterlife. And so we're all different. And so the way what happens now is I don't say, well, if that was me, I'd do this, or if that was my daughter, I'd do that. I just say, listen, sorry, I can't answer that. And then I give them those examples.
It sounds like you're incredibly considerate and thoughtful, and you do prioritize a lot of the most important ethics that encompass what is medicine. And at the same time, it sounds like you have been on the defense for numerous years now, and it would be exhausting. So how are you managing all of that, the emotional toll? Because every interview I've listened to you or heard you speak at, it just sounds like it's always you're always on the defense, and I can imagine it's a lot to bear.
Oh my, Ilan, it's been a constant battle from the day I got back from America. I virtually had a lawyer on retainer. It's been that bad. I've had so many complaints from my colleagues. You wouldn't even know the complaints I've had. I had complaints about someone heard me giving a consult, not giving a consult, just giving advice to someone in a hotel lobby and said, that's incredibly unprofessional behavior. And by the way, this guy looked like a guy called Charlie Teo. He knew exactly who I was. And I've had complaints about a sign on my car that the letters were too big and they said I was advertising. I've had complaints about the clothes I wear. I've had complaints about the shortness of my hair making me look too aggressive. I've had complaints about eating the children's food. I've had I had more complaints about me than any other doctor in the history of fucking New South Wales Health. And so, yes, it's been a constant battle, looking over my shoulder, knowing that the knives are poised, ready to attack at any time. And I've got a very good friend called Trevor Danos. I went to school with him. He's a lawyer. He's wise. He's my dearest friend. And he gave me advice that ended up being wrong. And his advice was, Charlie, they can always destroy a money-hungry neurosurgeon, but they can never destroy someone who spends half their time raising money for a charity. And so he goes, the work you're doing with the Charlie Teo Foundation is admirable, and they won't be able to destroy you because you've raised $50 million. Well, he was wrong because it meant nothing. At the end of the day, all those articles in the Sydney Morning Herald never once mentioned that I'd raised more money for brain cancer research than any other person in the history of Australian medicine. And so anyway, so how do I battle it? Well, I used to give a talk, That Which Doesn't Kill You Makes You Stronger, which is a bit glib, really, because, it can kill you. But I used to say it was all about a balanced life. And I'm very, very lucky that I have mental strength. I've surrounded myself with really good people. My ex-wife was incredibly supportive, and I credit her with, that saying that behind every great man, there's a great woman. That was my ex-wife. She was amazing. My current partner, Tracy, she is like, oh my God, I can't tell you how supportive she is. Every time something happens, like I get a complaint, I can discuss it with her. And, that old saying, a problem, what is it? A problem shared is a problem halved. Yeah. Well, every time I share it with her, she makes me feel a bit stronger. My children are amazing. They've put up with so many sacrifices over the years. Me not attending their birthday parties, me not attending to their sports days because I'm operating, and yet they're still loving and supportive to me. My team, when I had a team at Prince of Wales Private Hospital, they were fantastic. I just had dinner with them last night. They're still incredibly supportive. My friends. I can tell you this much. There is one positive that came out of the witch hunt that I never thought I'd even think, never really crossed my mind, and that is that it culls all those hangers-oners. So all those so-called friends that are friends when you're at your top of your game and you've got all this status and all this acknowledgement and celebrity and stuff, they drop you like a fucking hotcake when things go bad. And so from having, I don't know what number, let's pretend I had 50 close friends before that. Well, it culled 40 of them, I'm telling you. And you realize that, in fact, your true friend, there are these true friends who are friends when you're in need that really shine and make your life better and more fulfilling. And so I've got a great group of friends like Trevor and great family, and I've got a great partner. I've always had great partners.
One thing we always ask our guests before we wrap up is, what is their sweet spot? And you've named a fair few there, Charlie. A sweet spot meaning what is something really fulfilling you at the moment in your life, making you really happy. And what is your sweet spot? How are you now in your life currently?
I'm still operating. That's my sweet spot. I didn't even hesitate before saying that. I mean, I'm sure my partner would liked me to have said, my relationship, and maybe I should have said that, but no. I've been given a talent. I know that I'm really good at taking out brain tumours because I'm still doing them that no one else can do. And even in China, where there are these fantastic neurosurgeons with way more experience than me, have done more cases than me, and yet I can still take out tumours that they can't take out. And so, I think it'd be wrong, ethically wrong, if I didn't use that talent. And I love it. I'm just loving my work now. Sure, it's really sad that I can't help Australians, or as many Australians as I used to. But they built me a teaching centre in China. It's a 3-story teaching building. I taught my first course to Chinese neurosurgeons 2 weeks ago. You had 56 neurosurgeons from all around China, and we're going to be running regular courses there. So I'm disseminating the knowledge. I'm passing on the wisdom. I'm still operating on people and helping people, and I'm still loving it.
Charlie, before we finish up, if people want to find out more about the brilliant work you do now with the Charlie Teo Foundation, where can they best find you?
Yeah, there's a website, charlieteofoundation. Oh shit! You better correct it for me. I think it's .org.au.
We'll link it.
Yeah, if you can link it for me, that'd be great. Because the saddest thing about all of this is that no matter how good my surgery is, if you've got a malignant brain tumor, you're going to die from it. And how bad is that? So great surgery, great outcomes, everyone's positive, and then the thing comes back again and they end up dying from it. So I think part of my responsibility is to try and find a treatment for brain cancer that's not just surgery. And I know I'm not a very good scientist, and I'm certainly not good in the lab. So my forte is raising money. So that's what I've done. I've raised money through the Charlie Teo Foundation. The beauty about the Charlie Teo Foundation is that you can be 100% assured where the money's going. We have very low overheads, less than 20%, which is world's best. We comb the world looking for disruptive, out-of-the-box scientists who are going to find that cure. So not necessarily the big universities, but these, very, very smart people who may not be getting the funding or the recognition they deserve. We look for them. And so money well spent, not wasted, and funding a very important cause. And why is it important? Because what's our future? Our future are in the hands of our children. And what kills more children in Australia than any other cancer, in fact, any other disease, is brain cancer. So, unless we tackle brain cancer, our future is destined not to be as optimal as it could be. Optimal as it could be.
Professor Charlie Teo, thank you for joining the Big Bros podcast.
Well, you boys are very impressive. You both look like you're babies. You've asked amazingly excellent questions. You've been very probing and very respectful, and so I've enjoyed it very much, and thank you.
It's been an honor and pleasure to have you on. Thank you.